What would you do if someone questioned everything you believed about yourself? Steven Seagal sits in the back corner of the West Side Community Center, watching Master Takashi demonstrate a wrist lock to a circle of eager students. The afternoon. Light filters through dusty windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor where bare feet whisper against polished boards. For 3 years, Steven has been Master Takashi's most devoted student. Not the most talented, not the strongest, but the one who shows up every Tuesday and Thursday without fail, who practices the forms at home until his shoulders ache, who believes in the philosophy behind every movement. Aikido is not about fighting, Master Takashi always says. It is about harmony, about redirecting aggression rather than meeting it head-on, about becoming like water. Steven nods along with the others as Master Takashi explains the technique. His calloused hands rest on his knees, still bearing the small scars from his day job installing drywall. At 34, he is older than most students here. Quieter. The kind of man who listens more than he speaks. The kind of man who has spent his entire life avoiding confrontation. Growing up, Steven learned early that silence was safer than speaking up. His father's voice could fill a room with rage over the smallest things. His mother's tears came too easily when voices were raised. So Steven became the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over rough edges, who found compromise where others saw only conflict. That approach followed him into adulthood. At work, he is the guy who mediates disputes between crews. At home in his small apartment, he practices Aikido forms in the narrow space between his couch and kitchen table, moving through the flowing motions that feel like meditation in motion. But today feels different. Today, Eric Mansfield is here. Eric leans against the far wall, arms crossed, designer workout clothes marking him as an outsider in this humble space. He is everything Steven is not: loud, confident, successful. The kind of man who talks with his hands and takes up space without asking permission. His BMW is parked outside, gleaming silver against the community center's faded brick walls. You know what your problem is? Eric had said to Steven during the water break, his voice carrying across the small changing area. You're too soft. All this philosophical stuff is just an excuse for not being able to really fight. The words still burn, Steven had tried to explain. Aikido is not about fighting. He had said quietly. It is about finding harmony, about turning an opponent's strength against them without causing unnecessary harm. Eric had laughed. That's what weak people tell themselves when they can't handle real confrontation. Now Eric steps forward as master. Takashi calls for a volunteer to demonstrate the next technique. The room goes quiet. Even the ceiling fans seem to slow their lazy rotation. Steven notices how the other students unconsciously shift away from Eric, creating a wider circle around. The demonstration area. I'll do it, Eric says. But I want to make this interesting. Master Takashi's eyes narrow slightly. He has been teaching for decades, has faced down skeptics before. But something in Eric's tone carries a challenge that cuts through the peaceful atmosphere like a blade. What did you have in mind? Master Takashi asks, his voice maintaining its usual calm despite the tension building in the room. Eric grins, rolling his shoulders like a prizefighter preparing for battle. Let's see if this harmony stuff works when someone doesn't want to play along. The other students shift uncomfortably. Steven feels his stomach tighten. This is not how it works. Aikido is not about domination or proving points. It is about finding the path of least resistance, about turning an opponent's strength against them through precise technique and perfect timing. But Eric doesn't care about philosophy. He charges forward without warning, abandoning any pretense of controlled practice. His tackle is brutal, uncompromising, the kind of move that belongs in a street fight rather than a traditional dojo. There is no respect in his approach, no acknowledgement of the sacred space they occupy. What happens next unfolds in slow motion. Master Takashi, caught off guard by the sudden aggression, attempts to blend with the attack. His hands move to guide Eric's energy, to redirect the force harmlessly away. The technique is textbook perfect. Weight shift, hip rotation, gentle redirection of momentum. But Eric is not cooperating with the technique. He is not allowing himself to be guided. Instead, he drives through the attempted redirect, his shoulder connecting with Master Takashi's midsection. His wrestling background shows as he maintains his base, refusing to be moved or redirected. The sound echoes through the room, a dull thud that seems to suck all the air from the space. Master Takashi, the gentle teacher who has guided Steven toward a different way of being in the world, hits the floor hard. The silence that follows is deafening. Eric stands over the fallen instructor, breathing heavily but grinning. Around the room, students stare in shock. Some cover their mouths. Others look away as if witnessing something too private for public viewing. The afternoon light continues to stream through the windows, but somehow the room feels darker now. Steven's world tilts. Everything he has believed about Aikido, about harmony, about the way conflict should be resolved, it all crumbles in that moment. The philosophy he has carried like a shield, the techniques he has practiced until they became second nature, the quiet confidence he has built over 3 years of dedicated training. All of it means nothing if it cannot stand up to simple, brutal aggression. Eric dusts off his hands and looks around the room. His eyes find Steven's, and his grin widens. Still think harmony is the answer? He asks. Steven cannot speak, cannot move, cannot process what he has just witnessed. The cognitive dissonance is overwhelming. As Master Takashi slowly gets to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and something darker, Steven realizes that this moment will change everything. Not just for him, but for everyone in this room. The question is, what will they do with that change? What would you do? The dojo empties faster than water draining from a broken sink. Students gather their belongings with downcast eyes, speaking in hushed whispers that die the moment Master Takashi looks their way. The man who moments ago commanded respect through gentle authority now moves like someone recovering from a blow that went deeper than flesh. Steven remains in his corner, watching the exodus. His GI feels heavy against his skin, soaked with the sweat of witnessing something that should never have happened. The wooden floor beneath him seems less solid now, as if the very foundation of this place has been shaken. Eric stretches near the entrance, making a show of his post-workout routine. He bends and flexes with the casual arrogance of someone who has proven his point and enjoyed every second of it. His designer clothes remain pristine despite the confrontation, as if violence slides off him like rain. You coming back Thursday? Eric asks Steven, not bothering to lower his voice. Or are you done pretending this stuff actually works? Steven's mouth opens, but no words come. Part of him wants to defend Master Takashi, to explain that what happened was an ambush, not a fair demonstration of technique. But another part, the part that has been growing stronger since childhood, whispers that maybe Eric is right. Maybe harmony is just another word for weakness. Eric laughs at Steven's silence and heads for the door, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and the echo of his footsteps on wood that has absorbed 30 years of respectful training. Master Takashi begins straightening the practice area with mechanical precision. His movements are careful, controlled, but Steven notices how he favors his left side where Eric's shoulder connected. The older man's breathing is still shallow, catching slightly on each inhale. Sensei, Steven finally manages. Are you all right? Master Takashi pauses in his cleaning, a folded practice mat in his hands. His eyes meet Steven's, and for a moment, the mask of composed teacher slips. Underneath, Steven sees something he has never witnessed before. I am fine, Master Takashi says. But his voice carries a tremor that wasn't there an hour ago. Steven wants to say more, to bridge the gap that has opened between them. But the words feel inadequate, like trying to repair a broken vase with children's glue. Instead, he helps gather the scattered equipment, moving in the silence that has replaced their usual post-training discussions. The community center's custodian, Mrs. Chun, appears in the doorway with her cleaning cart. She is a small woman with silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, someone who has witnessed countless classes, recitals, and meetings in this space. Her eyes take in the scene. The early cleanup, the tension hanging in the air like smoke. Everything okay in here? She asks. Master Takashi nods quickly. Just finished early today. Mrs. Chin's expression suggests she doesn't believe him, but she has the wisdom that comes with age and experience. She has seen enough human drama to know when to ask questions and when to simply observe. I'll be in the supply room if you need anything, she says, pushing her cart toward the back of the building. Steven and Master Takashi continue their cleanup. In silence, the familiar routine, folding mats, organizing equipment, ensuring the space is ready for the next group, feels different now. What was once a peaceful conclusion to their training has become a somber ritual, like cleaning up after a funeral. As they work, Steven's mind replays the confrontation. He analyzes every detail, searching for the moment when things went wrong. Master Takashi's technique had been correct. The timing was proper. The principle of redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on was sound, but it hadn't worked. Steven thinks about all the hours he has spent practicing these same movements. All the careful attention to foot placement, hip rotation, the gentle guidance of an opponent's energy. He has felt the techniques work in controlled practice, has experienced the almost magical moment when an attacker's strength becomes their weakness, but Eric had refused to participate in that magic. He had simply powered through, using brute force to overcome centuries of refined technique. And it had worked that Steven's hands shake slightly as he stacks the last of the mats. The tremor surprises him. When did his body start betraying his emotions this way? Master Takashi notices. He walks over to where Steven stands, his own movements, still careful and measured. You are troubled, he observes. Steven looks at his teacher. This man who has guided him toward a different way of being in the world, who has shown him that strength doesn't have to be loud or aggressive. Master Takashi's face bears the wisdom of decades, the calm that comes from deep understanding of principle and practice. But today, that face also bears the flush of embarrassment and the shadow of doubt. Sensei, Steven begins, then stops. How? Do you ask your teacher if everything they've taught you is wrong? How do you voice the fear that the philosophy you've built your life around might be nothing more than beautiful delusion? What Eric did, Steven tries again. That wasn't Aikido.no. Master Takashi agrees. It was not, but it worked. The words hang between them like a challenge neither wants to acknowledge. Master Takashi is quiet for a long moment. Outside, the afternoon light is fading, casting longer shadows through the windows. The community center settles into its evening quiet, the sound of children's laughter from the playground growing distant. There are many types of strength, Steven, Master Takashi finally says. What happened today? It was not about strength. It was about respect, about understanding, about the willingness to engage with something larger than oneself. Steven nods, but the explanation feels hollow. Philosophy is beautiful in theory, but Eric's shoulder had been very real. The sound of Master Takashi hitting the floor had been very real. The doubt spreading through Steven's chest is very real. They finish cleaning in silence. Two men grappling with questions that have no easy answers. As they prepare to leave, Steven wonders if he will return on Thursday. He wonders if anything will ever feel the same. Thursday comes like a judgment day. Steven stands outside the community center, his gym bag heavy in his hand, watching through the glass doors as the usual pre-class ritual unfolds. Students arrive in clusters, bowing as they enter the dojo space, their voices carrying the comfortable cadence of people who belong somewhere. But Steven no longer feels like he belongs anywhere. The past 2 days have been a blur of sleepless nights and distracted work. On Tuesday evening, he had gone home and tried to practice his forms in the narrow space between his couch and kitchen table. The movements that once flowed like water now felt mechanical, empty. Each technique raised the same question: what happens when someone simply refuses to cooperate? He had called in sick to work yesterday, spending the day researching Aikido online, looking for answers that might restore his faith. Instead, he found forums full of debates about the art's effectiveness, videos of mixed martial artists dismissing traditional techniques, article after article questioning whether harmony-based martial arts had any place in real conflict. The doubt had grown like a tumor. Now, watching his fellow students through the glass, Steven sees them differently. There is Jenny, a social worker, who started training after a client threatened her. She moves with the quiet confidence of someone who believes Aikido will protect her if needed. There is Marcus, recently divorced, who found in the dojo a community that accepted his gentleness as strength rather than weakness. They all believe what Steven believed just 3 days ago. They all trust what Eric shattered in 30 seconds. Steven pushes through the doors, the familiar sound of the bell announcing his arrival. But instead of the usual warm greetings, he receives careful nods, sympathetic glances. Word has spread about Tuesday's confrontation. The dojo's small community has always been tight-knit, protective of its own. Master Takashi appears from the back room, his usual pre-class preparations complete. He moves normally, showing no obvious signs of Tuesday's encounter, but Stephen notices the way he holds himself, more guardedly, as if expecting another ambush. Their eyes meet across the room. Master Takashi's expression is unreadable, but Stephen detects something underneath the surface: calm, disappointment, concern, or simply the weariness of a teacher who has seen too many students lose their way. Before Stephen can approach his instructor, the door chimes again. Eric enters like a conquering hero returning to claim his prize. He wears the same designer workout clothes, the same confident smile, the same air of someone who has never doubted himself. But today he brings reinforcements. Two men who radiate the same aggressive energy, the same dismissive attitude toward everything the dojo represents. The temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. Jenny stops mid-conversation with another student. Marcus takes an unconscious step backward. Even Master Takashi's carefully maintained composure shows hairline cracks. Eric surveys the room with satisfaction, his gaze lingering on Master Takashi before settling on Stephen. "That I brought some friends who wanted to see this harmony stuff in action," Eric announces. "Hope you don't mind." Master Takashi's voice remains level, but Stephen can hear the strain underneath. "This is a place of learning and respect. Your friends are welcome to observe, but they must understand our customs." Eric's laugh is sharp, cutting. "Customs like letting people walk all over you." The words land like physical blows. Stephen watches his fellow students' faces crumble, sees the community that has nurtured him for 3 years begin to fracture in real time. But it's what happens next that breaks something fundamental inside Stephen. Master Takashi bows slightly, not in greeting, but in the subtle acknowledgement of defeat. It's barely perceptible, a micro-adjustment of posture that speaks of someone who has already lost a battle they never wanted to fight. Class begins, but it's a hollow mockery of their usual practice. Eric and his friends position themselves along the wall like judges at a trial. Every technique demonstration becomes a performance under hostile scrutiny. Every philosophical explanation draws snickers and whispered commentary. The sacred space that once felt like sanctuary now feels like a courtroom where the verdict has already been decided. Stephen pairs with Jenny for the first exercise, a simple wrist escape that he has practiced thousands of times. But under Eric's watchful eyes, his movements feel clumsy, uncertain. The technique that should flow naturally now requires conscious thought, and conscious thought breeds hesitation. Jenny notices his struggle. "You okay?" she whispers. Stephen nods. But he's not okay. Nothing is okay. Halfway through class, Eric raises his hand like a student with a question. Master Takashi acknowledges him with resigned politeness. "That I'm still not seeing how this works against someone who doesn't want to dance with you," Eric says. "Can we try that wrist thing on someone who's actually resisting?" Master Takashi's jaw tightens, almost imperceptibly. "The techniques work through principle and timing," he explains. "Force against force is not the way of Aikido. But that's exactly the problem, isn't it?" Eric stands, his friends flanking him like bodyguards. "In the real world, people don't follow your principles. They don't cooperate with your timing." He steps onto the mat without removing his shoes, a violation so fundamental that several students gasp audibly. Master Takashi's face goes pale, but he doesn't protest. The moment stretches, filled with the sound of disrespect grinding against tradition. Stephen watches his teacher. This man who has shown him that strength can be quiet, that wisdom can be gentle, that there are ways to resolve conflict without becoming what you fight against. Master Takashi stands frozen, caught between his principles and the reality of a situation that his art was never designed to handle. The silence becomes unbearable. Someone needs to do something. Someone needs to stand up to restore the balance, to defend what this place represents. But that someone is not Master Takashi. And Stephen realizes, with growing horror, that it's not going to be him either. The doubt inside him has grown too large, too heavy. It has paralyzed him just as surely as it has paralyzed his teacher. Eric grins, sensing victory. The dojo dies a little more. The breaking point comes not with violence, but with laughter. Eric's friends join him on the mat, their street shoes leaving scuff marks on the polished wood that has been maintained with reverence for decades. They move through the space like vandals in a museum, touching equipment without permission, disrupting the careful order that defines this sanctuary. Master Takashi stands at the center of his own dojo, paralyzed by the collision between his principles and brutal reality. His art demands that he remain calm, that he find harmony even in chaos, that he transform aggression into something peaceful. But how do you find harmony with someone who refuses to acknowledge its existence? Watch this, Eric says to his friends, then turns to address the class. I want to try something simple, just basic self-defense. Someone grabs your wrist, you get free. Easy, right? He points at Jenny, who has gone pale but maintains her position. On the mat, the social worker has seen enough bullies to recognize the dynamics at play, but she also understands that backing down will only make things worse. Jenny steps forward, her movements careful and controlled. She has been training for 2 years, has developed real skill in the gentle art of redirection. Under normal circumstances, she can execute a wrist escape with fluid grace. But these are not normal circumstances. Eric grabs her wrist with crushing force, his grip designed not to simulate an attack, but to cause actual discomfort. Jenny attempts. The technique, the precise rotation, the step-through, the use of her whole body structure to break his hold. Eric simply squeezes harder. Jenny's face contorts with pain. She tries again, applying the principles Master Takashi has taught her, but Eric's grip is relentless. He's not playing by the rules of Aikido. He's not allowing the technique to work. After 30 seconds of struggle, Jenny taps out, her wrist red and swollen. Interesting, Eric says, releasing her. So the technique only works if I let it work? Master Takashi finally speaks, his voice strained but still attempting calm. The technique requires proper application of principle. Force against. Force is not. Eric cuts him off. Yeah, I heard the speech. But in the real world, attackers don't follow your principles. That he turns to scan the room, his gaze settling on Steven. You've been here the longest. Show me how it's really done. Steven's stomach lurches. Every instinct screams at him to refuse, to find an excuse, to escape this nightmare scenario. But 30 sets of eyes are watching him, including Master Takashi's, and somewhere in the weight of that attention is an expectation he cannot name. He steps forward on legs that feel like water. Eric's grip, when it comes, is immediate and crushing. His fingers dig into Steven's wrist like steel cables, cutting off circulation, sending spikes of pain up his arm. This is not the controlled pressure of practice. This is the grip of someone who wants to hurt, who wants to prove a point written. In another person's suffering, Steven tries to execute the technique. He has done this escape thousands of times, has felt the moment when proper body mechanics overcome even superior strength. But Eric's grip is not just strong. It's malicious, designed to cause maximum discomfort while preventing the subtle adjustments that make the technique possible. 30 seconds pass. 60. Steven's wrist is going numb. Sweat beads on his forehead as he struggles against the iron grip, trying every variation of the technique he knows. Nothing works. Eric is not cooperating, not allowing the gentle redirections that make Aikido possible. The room fills with the sound of Steven's labored breathing, the squeak of his feet against the mat as he tries and fails to break free. His fellow students watch in silence, witnessing the systematic destruction of everything they have been taught to believe. Finally, Steven taps out. Eric releases him with a laugh that echoes off the walls like breaking glass. 3 years of training, Eric announces to the room. 3 years, and he can't get out of a simple wrist grab. What does that tell you about this art? Steven cradles his throbbing wrist, the pain less significant than the humiliation burning through his chest. He has been exposed, revealed as someone who cannot protect himself despite years of dedicated practice. The gentle philosophy that has guided him feels like a lie he has been telling himself. Master Takashi moves toward them, his face a mask of controlled distress. Perhaps we should end class early today, he suggests. Eric shakes his head. Oh no, we're just getting started. I want to try something else. That he signals to his friends, who spread out around the mat like wolves surrounding prey. The message is clear. This demonstration is about to become something else entirely. But before Eric can continue his assault on everything the dojo represents, an unexpected voice cuts through the tension. That's enough. Mrs. Chen stands in the doorway, her small frame backlit by the hallway lights. The custodian holds a mop in one hand and a cell phone in the other, her expression carrying the authority of someone who has seen too much disrespect in her lifetime. "This is a community center," she says, her voice carrying surprising steel. "Not a place for bullies to hurt people. You can leave now, or I can call security." To Eric's friends shift uncomfortably, suddenly aware that their actions have witnesses beyond the dojo students. The threat of outside intervention, police, security, consequences beyond this insulated space changes the dynamics immediately. Eric's grin falters for the first time. "That we were just having a demonstration," he says, but the confidence has leaked out of his voice. Mrs. Chin's expression doesn't change. "Demonstrations don't leave people with injured wrists. Leave. Now." The confrontation that has been building toward violence suddenly deflates. Eric and his friends gather their things with sullen faces, their swagger replaced by the awkward movements of people who have been caught and called out. But as they reach the door, Eric turns back one final time. "This isn't over," he says, his eyes finding Stevens across the room. "Next week, I want to see what you people are really made of." The door slams behind them. In the silence that follows, Steven looks around the dojo he has called home for 3 years. The space feels smaller now, more fragile. The community that once felt unbreakable has been revealed as something that can be shattered by simple, sustained cruelty. And Steven realizes that he no longer knows who he is supposed to be. The week passes like a fever dream. Steven calls in sick to work on Friday, then spends the weekend locked in his apartment, nursing his bruised wrist and his more deeply bruised sense of self. He tries to practice his forms, but every movement feels hollow, mechanical. The flowing techniques that once felt like meditation now seem like elaborate self-deception. By Monday, he forces himself back to his construction job, but his coworkers notice the change. The quiet confidence that once marked him as a natural mediator has been replaced by something else, a flinching quality, as if he expects attack from any direction. Tuesday arrives with the weight of inevitability. Steven stands outside the community center again, but this time he's not alone. Through the glass doors, he can see that the usual pre-class gathering is smaller. Jenny isn't there. She had called Master Takashi to say her wrist was still too sore to train. Marcus has also found reasons to be elsewhere. The community is dissolving. Steven pushes through the doors, the familiar chime now sounding like a funeral bell. The remaining students greet him with the careful politeness reserved for the walking wounded. Everyone knows what happened last week. Everyone knows that Eric will be back. Master Takashi emerges from the back room, his usual pre-class preparations complete. But Steven notices details that would have escaped him before. The way his teacher's eyes dart toward the entrance, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way he holds himself like someone expecting bad news. They are all expecting bad news, class. Begins with half the usual attendance. The techniques feel forced, the philosophical discussion strained. Everyone is going through the motions, but the heart has gone out of it. The sacred space has been violated, and no amount of careful form can restore what has been broken. Halfway through class, Mrs. Chin appears in the doorway. Mr. Takashi, she calls softly. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Master Takashi excuses himself, following the custodian into the hallway. Their conversation is brief, conducted in hushed tones that carry the weight of serious matters. When Master Takashi returns, his face is even more troubled than before. "We will end class early tonight," he announces. "Please practice your forms at home." The dismissal feels final, like the closing of a book that will never be reopened. As the students file out, Steven lingers. Something in Master Takashi's demeanor suggests this conversation is far from over. The older man moves through his post-class routine with mechanical precision, but his thoughts are clearly elsewhere. "Sensei," Steven begins. "What did Mrs. Chin want?" Master Takashi pauses in his cleaning, a folded practice mat in his hands. He looks older than Steven has ever seen him, worn down by forces that gentle philosophy cannot address. "She wanted to warn me," Master Takashi says. "Eric has been here during the day, asking questions about our schedule, about when the room is available. He has been investigating." The word hangs in the air like a threat. Steven's stomach tightens. "What kind of questions?" Master Takashi sets down the mat and walks to the window overlooking the parking lot. His reflection in the glass looks like a ghost of the confident teacher Steven once knew. The kind of questions someone asks when they are planning something, Master Takashi says. Mrs. Chun is concerned. She has seen this before. People who use intimidation to take over community spaces, who drive out programs they don't approve of. Stephen joins him at the window. The parking lot is empty except for their 2 cars, but somehow it feels like they are being watched. There's something else, Master Takashi continues. Mrs. Chun mentioned that Eric has been asking about me specifically, about my background, my training, my credentials. The way he says the last word suggests deeper concerns. Stephen waits, sensing there is more to this story. Master Takashi is quiet for a long moment, his reflection wavering in the glass. When he speaks again, his voice carries a weight that Stephen has never heard before. I have not been entirely honest with you, Stephen. With any of you. Stephen's heart begins to race. What do you mean? Master Takashi turns from the window, his expression carrying the burden of someone about to reveal a truth they have carried too long. My teaching credentials. They are not what I have allowed people to believe. I learned Aikido as a young man, yes. I trained seriously for many years. But I never completed the formal Dan rankings. I never received official certification to teach. The words hit Stephen like physical blows. I came to America 30 years ago, Master Takashi continues. I was lost, looking for purpose. This community center needed an Aikido instructor, and I needed to belong somewhere. So I presented myself as something I was not quite qualified to be. Stephen's world tilts again, but this time in a different direction. The man he has looked up to, the teacher whose wisdom has guided him, is not the master he pretended to be, but instead of anger, Stephen feels something unexpected, a strange kind of relief. For 30 years, I have tried to live up to the title. I gave myself, Master Takashi says. I have studied, practiced, read everything I could find about true Aikido philosophy. I have tried to be worthy of the respect you have all shown me. He pauses, his eyes meeting Stephen's. But Eric's challenge has revealed the truth. I am not a master. I am simply a man who has been trying to teach others what I hoped was true about myself. Stephen stares at his teacher, this man who has just confessed to 3 decades of elaborate impersonation. By all rights, he should feel betrayed, deceived, angry. Instead, he feels something else entirely. Understanding, because isn't that what they have all been doing? Pretending to be something they hope to become? Practicing techniques they believe will work, embracing philosophy they trust will guide them, becoming people they want to be rather than accepting who they fear they are. Master Takashi has been doing the same thing, just on a larger scale. The silence stretches between them, filled with the weight of revealed truth. Outside, a car engine starts in the distance. The sound feels like a timer counting down to something inevitable. Mrs. Chun appears in the doorway again, her face graved at his back. She says simply, with more people this time. Through the windows, Stephen can see them gathering in the parking lot. Eric and at least 6 others, all carrying the same aggressive energy that has been poisoning this space. They move with the confidence of a pack that has already identified its prey. Master Takashi's shoulders sag under the weight of inevitability. That I should have expected this, he says. Eric is not the type to let things go. He has tasted victory here, and now he wants to claim the territory. Completely. Stephen's mind races. The confession about Master Takashi's credentials has shifted something fundamental in his understanding, but it hasn't resolved the central problem. If anything, it has made their situation more desperate. What do we do? Stephen asks. Master Takashi looks around the dojo, at the carefully maintained equipment, the philosophy posters on the walls, the wooden floor that has absorbed 30 years of respectful practice. His expression carries the resignation of someone preparing to surrender everything they have built. That we cannot fight them, he says. Not in the way they want to fight. And we cannot reason with them, because they have no interest in reason. The front door chimes, and Eric enters with his enlarged entourage. They spread through the space like an occupying army, their voices loud and disrespectful, their movements careless of the sacred nature of the environment. Mrs. Chun follows them in, her mop cart positioned strategically near the exit. Stephen realizes she is not just observing. She is documenting, ready to call for help if needed. Well, Eric says, surveying the nearly empty dojo. Where is everyone? I thought we were going to have a real demonstration tonight. His followers laugh, the sound harsh against the room's usual quiet dignity. Master Takashi steps forward, his posture straight despite the circumstances. "This is a place of learning," he says. "If you wish to observe our class, you are welcome. But you must respect our customs." Eric's grin widens. "Customs? You mean like pretending to be a master when you're not?" The words hit like a physical blow. Steven's stomach lurches as he realizes what Eric has discovered during his investigation. The teaching credentials, the background, the 30-year deception, all of it has been exposed. "That's right," Eric continues, addressing the few remaining students. "Your so-called master never earned the rank he claims. He's been lying to you." For decades, the remaining students look stricken. Stephen watches their faces crumble as the last foundation of their belief system is stripped away. First, their techniques were proven ineffective. Now their teacher has been revealed as a fraud. Master Takashi's face goes ashen, but he maintains his dignity. "It is true," he says quietly. "I have not been honest about my credentials. But the principles we practice, the philosophy we embrace, these things remain valid regardless of my personal failings." Eric laughs. "Principles? Philosophy? You got dropped by one tackle. Your star student couldn't break out of a wrist grab. And now we find out you're not even qualified to teach this nonsense." He turns to address the room directly. "This is what happens when you build your life on lies. When you choose weakness over strength, fantasy over reality." Stephen feels something breaking inside him. Not the gentle surrender he has known before, but something sharper, more painful. He has spent 3 years building an identity around this place, these people, these beliefs. To see it all dismantled with such casual cruelty is almost unbearable. But as he watches Master Takashi endure this public humiliation with quiet dignity, something else stirs within him. The man standing before Eric may not have the credentials he claimed, but he has spent 30 years trying to live up to an ideal. He has guided dozens of students toward better versions of themselves. He has created a community based on respect, patience, and the belief that conflict can be resolved without becoming what you fight against. Those things are real, regardless of paperwork or official rankings. Eric seems to sense Stephen's internal struggle. He turns his attention to the one student who poses the greatest threat to his complete victory. "That you're the one who's been here longest, aren't you?" Eric says. 3 years of training under a fake master. How does it feel to know you've wasted all that time?" Stephen meets Eric's gaze, and for the first time in a week, he doesn't look away. "I don't think it was wasted," he says quietly. Eric's eyebrows rise in mock surprise. "Really? Even after everything you've seen? Even after I proved your techniques don't work and your teacher is a fraud?" Stephen glances at Master Takashi, then at Mrs. Chun, who stands ready to intervene if violence erupts. He thinks about the community that has formed in this space, the quiet transformations he has witnessed, the way Aikido has shaped not just his movements, but his approach to conflict in every area of his life. "The techniques work if both people participate," Stephen says. "The philosophy is sound if both people choose respect over domination. But you're right about one thing. None of it works against someone who refuses to engage with anything beyond brute force." Eric's grin falters slightly. He had expected capitulation or anger, not this measured response to "So what are you saying?" Eric asks. Stephen takes a deep breath, feeling something crystallize within him. "I'm saying that maybe the problem isn't our art. Maybe the problem is people who think strength only comes from hurting others." The room goes quiet. Even Eric's followers seem taken aback by the calm certainty in Stephen's voice, but Eric recovers quickly. "Pretty words," he says. "But words don't matter when someone wants to hurt you." He steps closer to Stephen, his intention clear. "Let's see if your philosophy can handle what comes next." The moment balances on a knife's edge. Mrs. Chin's hand moves toward her phone. Master Takashi prepares to intervene despite his own vulnerability, and Stephen realizes that everything they have built together, the community, the philosophy, the quiet belief that there might be better ways to resolve conflict, hangs in the balance of what happens next. But before Eric can take another step, the door chimes again. Everyone turns toward the sound, expecting another member of Eric's crew. Instead, a figure fills the doorway that changes the entire dynamic of the room. Mr. Yamamoto enters with the quiet authority of someone who has never needed to prove himself to anyone. He is perhaps 70, compact and precise in his movements. wearing a simple black GI with a well-worn black belt that speaks of decades rather than years. His presence seems to absorb all the aggressive energy in the room, like a stone dropped into turbulent water. Stephen has never seen him before, but Mrs. Chin's face lights with recognition and relief. Yamamoto-sensei, she says, bowing slightly. Thank you for coming. The elderly man nods to her, then surveys the scene with calm, assessing eyes. He takes in Eric's aggressive posture, Master Takashi's humiliated stance, the scattered students, the violated space. His expression remains neutral, but something in his bearing suggests a depth of experience that dwarfs everyone else in the room. Eric, confused by this interruption, attempts to reassert control. Look, old man, this doesn't concern you. We're just having a demonstration here. Yamamoto-sensei turns his attention to Eric with the patience of someone observing an interesting but not particularly threatening insect. I am Yamamoto Hiroshi, he says, his English accented but precise. I am the regional director for the United States Aikido Federation. Mrs. Chin called me because she was concerned about what was happening here. The title hits the room like a thunderbolt. Master Takashi's face goes white as he realizes that the one person qualified to judge his 30-year deception has just arrived to witness its exposure. Eric, however, sees opportunity rather than threat. Perfect timing, he says. You can tell everyone here what I've been trying to explain. This guy is a fake, and Aikido doesn't work against real fighting. Yamamoto-sensei's eyes move to Master Takashi, and Stephen watches his teacher prepare for the final humiliation. The official exposure of his fraudulent credentials, the formal end of everything he has built. But Yamamoto-sensei's next words surprise everyone. Takashi-san, he says with a slight bow. It has been many years. Master Takashi's confusion is visible. I don't understand, sensei. We have never met. But I have heard of you, Yamamoto-sensei continues. Mrs. Chun has spoken of your work here many times over the years. She is proud of what you have accomplished in this community. That he walks further into the room, his movement creating space that somehow reduces Eric's presence rather than accommodating it. She has told me about the students you have guided, the conflicts you have helped resolve, the way you have built something peaceful in a place that knew only anger before you arrived. Stephen watches this interaction with growing amazement. Yamamoto-sensei is not exposing Master Takashi's deception. He is acknowledging something else entirely. 30 years ago, Yamamoto-sensei continues, addressing the room now rather than just Master Takashi. Many of us who came to America faced difficult choices. We could preserve our arts in perfect traditional form, isolated from the communities that needed them. Or we could plant seeds in soil that was ready to receive them, even if we ourselves were still growing. He pauses before Master Takashi, his eyes kind but serious. I have reviewed your teaching record, Takashi-san. Not your paperwork, your results. The students you have trained, the community you have built, the principles you have embodied. These things matter more than certificates. Master Takashi's voice is barely a whisper. But my credentials were never the source of your authority to teach, Yamamoto-sensei says firmly. Your authority comes from your dedication, your understanding, and your ability to guide others toward better versions of themselves. He reaches into his GI and withdraws a small wooden box, worn smooth with age. This belonged to my teacher's teacher, he says, opening the box to reveal a simple brass tsuba, a sword guard, decorated with a design of flowing water. It is not valuable to collectors, but it carries the spirit of our art. The belief that strength flows like water, finding its way around obstacles rather than smashing through them. Yamamoto-sensei extends the box toward Master Takashi. I believe it belongs here now, with someone who understands its meaning. The room holds its breath as Master Takashi accepts the gift with trembling hands. Even Eric's followers sense they are witnessing something significant, though they may not understand exactly what. Eric, however, is not finished. This is all very touching, he interrupts, but it doesn't change the fact that Aikido doesn't work. I proved that when I dropped your friend here, and when his student couldn't break out of a simple grip. Yamamoto-sensei turns to Eric with the same calm attention he has shown everyone else. You are correct that Aikido requires cooperation to function properly, he says. But you misunderstand what kind of cooperation that is. Eric's confidence wavers slightly. What do you mean? Aikido requires the cooperation of the universe itself, Yamamoto-sensei explains. Gravity, momentum, balance, timing, these things work with us when we understand their principles. But more importantly, it requires the cooperation of our own spirit, the willingness to remain centered when others lose control, the strength to respond rather than react. He gestures toward Master Takashi, who still holds the wooden box like a sacred trust. What you see as failure, I see as success. This man has maintained his dignity under attack. He has built something beautiful in spite of his own imperfections. He has created a community that chooses growth over conquest. Yamamoto-sensei's gaze encompasses the entire room now, settling finally on Stephen. That is the highest expression of Aikido. Not the ability to defeat others, but the ability to transform. Conflict into understanding, anger into wisdom, fear into compassion. The silence that follows feels different from all the others, not empty, but full of possibility. Eric shifts uncomfortably, his momentum broken by this unexpected intervention. And Stephen realizes that something fundamental has just changed, not just in the room, but in himself. That Eric's facade finally cracks. Without the momentum of easy victory, without a terrified opponent to dominate, he looks smaller somehow. His followers shift restlessly behind him, their packed confidence wavering in the presence of someone who radiates actual authority rather than manufactured intimidation. You can't just talk your way out of what happened, Eric says, but his voice lacks its earlier certainty. I still dropped him. Your student still couldn't break my grip. That Yamamoto-sensei nods thoughtfully. You are correct. Those things happened. But do you understand why they happened? Eric's jaw tightens. Because Aikido doesn't work against real resistance to NO, Yamamoto-sensei says gently. Because neither Takashi-san nor his student were prepared. For someone who refused to engage with anything beyond violence, that he walks to the center of the mat, his movements creating a natural circle of attention around him. Aikido assumes that both people in a conflict want resolution rather than domination. When that assumption proves false, the art reveals its limitations. But it also reveals something else, the character of the people involved. Stephen finds himself drawn into the circle, along with Master Takashi and even some of Eric's confused followers. Tell me, Yamamoto-sensei continues, addressing Eric directly. What did you gain from your victories here? What did they teach you about yourself? Eric's mouth opens, then closes. The question seems to catch him off guard. That I proved I was stronger, he finally says. Yes, Yamamoto-sensei agrees. You proved you could overcome people who chose not to fight back. You proved you could maintain aggression longer than they could maintain composure. But what else? The room waits for Eric's answer, but none comes. Stephen watches this exchange with growing understanding. Yamamoto-sensei is not defending Aikido's effectiveness in combat. He is questioning whether combat effectiveness is the measure of a person's worth. Master Takashi steps forward, the wooden box still cradled in his hands. He looks at Eric with an expression that carries no anger, no resentment, only a kind of patient sadness. That I owe you an apology, Master Takashi says quietly. Not for my techniques or my teaching, but for allowing you to believe that your pain justified hurting others. That Eric's face flushes. I don't have any pain. I don't need. Everyone has pain, Master Takashi interrupts gently. The question is what we do with it. I chose to build something that helped people find peace. You chose to tear that down. Both choices reveal who we are. For the first time since this confrontation began, Eric looks genuinely uncertain. His followers exchange glances, no longer sure they are supporting the right side of this conflict. Mrs. Chin speaks from her position, near the door. In 30 years of watching classes here, she says, I have seen people transform themselves. Angry people become patient. Fearful people become confident. Violent people learn to find other ways. She looks directly at Eric. But I have never seen anyone become a better person by making others feel small. The words hang in the air with the weight of witnessed truth. That Yamamoto-sensei opens another small container, this one containing what appears to be a simple piece of black cloth. He unfolds it to reveal a formal certificate written in both Japanese and English. Takashi-san. He says, this is your official recognition as a certified instructor in the United States Aikido Federation. Your 30 years of dedicated teaching, your commitment to the principles of our art, and your ability to maintain dignity under pressure have earned you the credentials you thought you lacked. Master Takashi stares at the certificate with disbelief. But my training, my background, your training has been with your students, with your community, with the daily practice of living Aikido principles, Yamamoto-sensei explains. There is no higher certification than the trust of those you have guided toward better versions of themselves. Stephen feels tears beginning to form as he watches his teacher, his real teacher, credentialed or not, accept the recognition he has. Spent 30 years believing he didn't deserve. Eric makes one last attempt to salvage his position. This is all just fancy talk, he says. It doesn't change the fact that when push comes to shove, nice guys finish last. Yamamoto-sensei considers this statement with the same thoughtful attention he has given everything else. Perhaps, he says finally. But I would ask you to consider this. In your victories here, what did you actually win? He gestures around the room, at the students who have stayed despite the conflict, at Master Takashi holding his certificate, and Sacred Tsuba, at Mrs. Chun, standing guard over the community she has protected for decades. You drove away some students, yes. You humiliated a good man, temporarily. You proved that aggression can overcome gentleness in the short term. But look around you now. What has your victory actually accomplished? Eric follows his gaze, taking in the scene with what might be growing. Awareness. The community you tried to destroy is stronger now, not weaker, Yamamoto-sensei continues. The teacher you tried to discredit has been officially recognized. The students you tried to intimidate have seen what it looks like to choose dignity over dominance. Stephen realizes that Yamamoto-sensei is right. The attack on their dojo has not destroyed what they built. It has clarified what they value and why it matters. Master Takashi steps toward Eric, holding out his hand in a gesture of reconciliation. You are welcome here if you wish to learn, he says simply. But you must choose whether you want to be someone who builds things or someone who tears them down. Eric stares at the offered hand for a long moment. His choice will define not just this moment, but the kind of person he decides to become. The room waits in perfect silence for his decision. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. Eric stares at Master Takashi's outstretched hand for what feels like an eternity. The room holds its breath, suspended between two possible futures. In one, Eric accepts the gesture and begins a journey towards something better than what he has been. In the other, he rejects it and walks away unchanged, carrying his anger like a weapon he will never stop using. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Eric reaches out. Their hands meet in the center of the circle, and something shifts in the room's energy. Not resolution exactly, but the possibility of it. Eric's grip is still too firm, still carries the need to prove something. But it no longer feels like a challenge that I don't understand this stuff, Eric says quietly. All this philosophy, this harmony talk, it doesn't make sense to me. Master Takashi nods. Understanding takes time. It requires us to question things we have always believed about strength and weakness, about winning and losing. Eric releases his hand and steps back, his followers gathering uncertainly around him. For a moment, Stephen thinks he might actually stay, might try to learn something from this encounter beyond how to dominate others. But Eric shakes his head. I can't, he says. This isn't who I am. He turns toward the door, then pauses. But maybe. It doesn't have to be who you are either. The words are directed at his followers, some of whom look torn between loyalty and curiosity. 2 of them choose to follow Eric out into the night. 3 others remain, their expressions carrying the uncertain hope of people glimpsing a different way to be strong. The door closes behind Eric with a soft chime, and the room exhales collectively. Yamamoto-sensei bows to the remaining group. The demonstration is complete, he says with gentle humor. Class dismissed. But nobody moves to leave. Instead, they begin the familiar ritual of cleaning up, but with a different energy than usual. Master Takashi places the sacred tsuba in a place of honor on the small shrine at the front of the room. His movements carry new confidence, the relaxation that comes from no longer hiding who you are. Stephen helps fold the practice mats, his hands steady for the first time in a week. The doubt that has been eating at him since Eric's first challenge has not disappeared entirely, but it has transformed into something else, a more mature understanding of what strength actually means. Mrs. Chen appears with her cleaning cart, but this time she joins the cleanup rather than simply waiting for them to finish. As she works, she shares stories Stephen has never heard before, about other programs that have faced similar challenges, about the importance of protecting spaces where people can grow without fear. She tells them about the phone call she made to Yamamoto-sensei 3 days ago when Eric's investigation began to feel like stalking, about the research she did to find someone who could provide the kind of authority that would restore balance to their situation. "You called him for us?" Stephen asks. Mrs. Chin pauses in her cleaning, her expression matter of fact. "This is my community center too. I have watched people transform themselves here for 30 years. I wasn't going to let some bully destroy that without a fight." As they finish cleaning, Yamamoto-sensei approaches Stephen directly. "You have been training here for 3 years, he observes." Stephen nods. "Yes, sensei. And you still question whether it has value." Stephen considers the statement carefully. The old him would have denied the doubt, would have insisted on faith even when evidence suggested otherwise. But the events of the past week have taught him something about the difference between blind belief and thoughtful commitment that I question whether I'm strong enough to live up to its principles. Stephen says finally. "Whether any of us are." Yamamoto-sensei smiles. "That is the beginning of wisdom. The day you stop questioning your own strength is the day you begin to rely on false confidence instead of genuine understanding." He gestures toward Master Takashi, who is carefully arranging the practice equipment for Thursday's class. "Your teacher questioned himself for 30 years, and that questioning made him a better instructor than many people with perfect credentials. Your questioning will make you a better student and eventually a better teacher yourself." 6 months later, the dojo has not just recovered, it has grown. The display case near the entrance now holds Master Takashi's official certification alongside the sacred tsuba, but these are not the items that draw the most attention. Instead, visitors are drawn to a simple wooden plaque mounted beside them. Strength is not the absence of doubt, but the willingness to act with compassion despite uncertainty. The words were suggested by Stephen, approved by Master Takashi, and crafted by Mrs. Chin's husband, who runs a small woodworking shop in the neighborhood. They represent the lesson that emerged from their confrontation with Eric. Not that harmony always wins, but that choosing harmony despite its vulnerability is itself a form of victory. Stephen now assists with teaching the beginner's class, his own journey from doubt to understanding, serving as a bridge for new students who arrive carrying their own questions about what it means to be strong. He tells them honestly that Aikido will not make them invincible, that there are people in the world who will not cooperate with their techniques, that philosophy cannot always overcome aggression. But he also tells them about the night when an elderly teacher appeared at exactly the right moment, when a custodian stood up to bullies, when a community chose to protect something beautiful rather than abandon it. He tells them about the difference between defeating others and transforming yourself. 2 of Eric's former followers now train regularly, their understanding of strength gradually shifting from domination to discipline, from conquest to compassion. They still struggle with the philosophical aspects, still sometimes revert to their old assumptions about power and weakness, but they keep showing up, and that willingness to question their own beliefs is all any teacher can ask for. Master Takashi frames his official certificate, but he hangs it beside a photo of that first small class 30 years ago, a reminder that credentials matter less than commitment. That authority comes not from what you claim to be, but from who you actually become through daily practice. The sacred tsuba remains in its place of honor, but now it shares the shrine with contributions from other students. A small Buddha statue from Jenny, who returned after her wrist healed. A piece of calligraphy from Marcus, who found in the dojo's survival a metaphor for his own resilience. A simple river stone from Stephen, representing the flow that continues despite obstacles. The community center thrives, its programs expanding to serve more families, more cultures, more people seeking spaces where they can grow without fear. Mrs. Chin's vigilance has become legend among the staff. Her willingness to protect what matters, serving as a model for how ordinary people can become guardians of extraordinary things. And sometimes, late at night when the building is quiet, Stephen practices his forms alone in the empty dojo. His movements flow like water now, not because he has mastered every technique, but because he has learned to accept the uncertainty that comes with choosing gentleness in a world that often rewards aggression. That he thinks about Eric sometimes. wondering what path the man ultimately chose, whether he found ways to be strong that didn't require making others feel weak. Stephen hopes so, but he has learned that he cannot control other people's journeys, only his own commitment to walking a better path. The wooden floor absorbs his movements as it has absorbed 30 years of similar practice, holding the memory of everyone who has chosen to transform themselves in this humble space. The afternoon light filters through the same dusty windows, casting the same long shadows that welcomed him 3 years ago. But Stephen is not the same person who first walked through these doors. He is someone who has learned to question without abandoning hope, to doubt without losing faith, to remain gentle without becoming passive. Someone who understands that true strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to remain open to growth despite the risks that openness entails. What would you do if someone questioned everything you believed about yourself? Stephen knows the answer now. You would listen to the question, examine your beliefs honestly, and choose to become someone worthy of the faith others place in you. Not because you are perfect, but because you are committed to the endless practice of becoming better. The practice continues. The community endures. The choice between building and tearing down faces each of us every day. What will you choose? If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe.